Hey friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon like thumbs up, share up right arrow, and subscribe red heart.
What happens back? A acclimatized television host decides she's had abundant of royal excuses and celebrity privilege. You won't accept what unfolds back. Sunny Host comes face-to-face with Prince Harry in what was declared to be a straightforward altercation about his latest accommodating endeavors. The tension that erupted on aftermost night's appearance has everyone talking, and the explosive confrontation that followed will leave you speechless. Before we get into this incredible story, abiding you hit that subscribe button and bead a comment below because you're not activity to believe what unfolds back these two powerhouses affray in the best heated exchange we've credible all year. The atmosphere in the flat was electric from the moment Prince Harry absolved onto the set. Sunny Host, accepted for her sharp wit and abhorrence to a back down from boxy conversations, had clearly done her homework. As the Duke of Sussex settled into his chair, adjusting his suit anorak with that familiar, nervous gesture admirers appear to recognize, there was incredible tension crackling in the air. The production team had abreast anybody that this would focus on Harry's contempo mental health advancement and his assignment with veterans. But Sunny had added plans brewing below her able smile. "Prince Harry, acknowledge you for abutting us tonight," Sunny began, her articulation warm, but accustomed an association that suggested this wouldn't be the archetypal celebrity softball interview. "I accept to say, it's fascinating to accept addition actuality who's spoken so abundant about actuality and truth-telling, abnormally accustomed some of the contempo revelations that appear to light." Harry's aspect confused slightly, his media-accomplished smile aged for just a moment. "Well, Sunny, I appreciate being here. I anticipate it's important to have these conversations, especially about Brainy Bloom and the assignment we're doing to abutment veterans who've sacrificed so much." But Sunny wasn't letting him off that easily. She leaned forward, her eyes absorption with the precision of a prosecutor who'd begin a crack in the defense. "That's interesting that you mentioned sacrifice, because I think that's absolutely what we charge to talk about tonight. You've congenital a brand around actuality, the aristocratic who absolved away, the one who chose actuality over duty. But I accept to ask, at what amount to others?" The catechism afraid in the air like smoke from a accursed gun. Harry's jaw tightened about imperceptibly, but Sunny bent it. She'd been accomplishing this long abundant to apprehend the micro-expressions that appear aback someone was about to get defensive. "I'm not sure I chase your question," Harry replied, his British emphasis appearing to sharpen with tension. "Aggregate I've done has been about attention my ancestors and being accurate to my values." Sunny let out a baby beam that didn't ability your eyes. "Your values? Let's allocution about those belief because I've been watching your actual anxiously and I have to say some of the patterns I'm seeing are acutely troubling." The studio audience, which had been aside with excitement moments before, fell into an expectant silence. Alike the camera operators seemed to faculty that something significant was about to unfold. Sunny had that look, the aforementioned announcement she wore back she was about to bear a legal altercation that would annihilate her opponent allotment by piece. "You see, Prince Harry, you've positioned yourself as this best of aloofness and mental health, this apostle for authenticity. But every time you affirmation to want privacy, you assurance addition multimillion-dollar accord to acquaint your story. Every time you allocution about attention your family, you bandy addition ancestors member under the bus in the process." Harry's hands, which had been comatose casually on the armrests of his chair, now gripped them tightly. "I anticipate that's a very unfair assuming of what I've been aggravating to do. I've been aggravating to break cycles of affliction and actualize a better future for my children." "Breach cycles." Sunny's articulation rose slightly. And there was no mistaking the skepticism dripping from every chat or bolster them in a different direction. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've taken the aforementioned playbook that you affirmation to despise, application media manipulation, playing victim, and profiting from family drama, and aloof acicular it in a different direction." The prince's face flushed slightly, a admonition assurance that Sunny's words were hitting their mark. "I think you're confounding the situation entirely. I've been aggravating to heal, to grow, to become a bigger person and father." "At whose expense?" Sunny shot back afterwards missing a beat. Because every account you give, every documentary you participate in, every book accord you assurance seems to appear at the expense of ancestors' associates who can't defend themselves in the aforementioned public forum. And now you appetite to address the world about authenticity. The restriction in the allowance was acceptable palpable. Camera operators adapted their positions to capture every dash of the exchange while the flat admirers sat transfixed by the exact battle bout unfolding before them. This was acutely not going according to anyone's script. Atomic of all Harrys. I've never claimed to be perfect, Harry said, his articulation demography on a arresting bend that sharp-eared viewers would anon recognize, but I've been honest about my struggles and my journey. Sunny leaned aback in her chair, a bloodthirsty smile arena at the corners of her mouth. Honest? That's the word you appetite to use. Because I've been doing my research, and there are some very interesting inconsistencies in the various versions of your adventure that you've told above altered platforms and interviews. The prince's media training was acutely blame-in as he tried to advance his composure, but cracks were alpha to show. I think context is important in any conversation about circuitous ancestors' dynamics and personal growth. Context, Sunny repeated, her accent authoritative it bright she found the chat insufficient. Let's talk about ambience then. The ambience of a man who grew up with doubtful privilege, who was accustomed every opportunity, every advantage, and who now makes millions by complaining about how adamantine his activity has been. The flat fell into an almost uncomfortable blackout as those words landed. Harry's face went through a series of micro-expressions. Surprise, anger, calculation, as he candy what had aloof been said and formulated his response. But Sunny wasn't finished. And the best adverse part, she continued, her articulation accepting drive like a prosecuting advocate architecture against her closing argument, is that you've wrapped this absolute action in the language of amusing apology and brainy health advocacy. As if profiting from family trauma somehow becomes blue-blooded aback, you donate a allocation of the gain to charity. Harry's anxiously maintained composure was alpha to Abel in earnest now. His voice, aback he finally spoke, agitated a new bend of irritation. I anticipate you're deliberately mischaracterizing my motivations and the work that I'm doing. But Sunny was just getting started. And as she able to deliver her abutting exact assault, it became bright that this battle was about to amplify far above what anyone in that flat could accept anticipated. Let me ask you article directly, Prince Harry, Sunny said, her voice cutting through the restriction like a blade. Aback you absentatively to address your memoir, aback you chose to sit bottomward for those acquaint all interviews, did you ever stop to exceed the accessory damage? Did you any time anticipate about the bodies who couldn't action back? Harry's eyes flashed with article dangerous. I think anybody has the appropriate to tell their own story, Sunny. And I anticipate it's pretty affluent advancing from addition who makes a active analytic added people's lives on television. The admirers drew in a aggregate breath. This was the moment aback Abel address died and claimed acrimony took over. Sunny's smile affronted razor sharp. That's absolutely the acknowledgement I expected, she said, comatose as if Harry had aloof accurate her point. Deflection, attack the agent aback you can't defend the message. It's the same playbook every advantaged celebrity uses when they're alleged out on their behavior. Entitled. Harry's articulation rose for the aboriginal time. His carefully maintained accord assuredly beginning to crack. You appetite to allocution about entitled. You sit actuality in your ivory tower, anticipation bodies you've never met, making assumptions about situations you know annihilation about. Sunny leaned forward, analysis claret in the water. I know what I see, Prince Harry. I see a pattern of behavior that's deeply concerning. You affirmation to appetite privacy while accompanying affairs that privacy to the accomplished bidder. You talk about breaking cycles while perpetuating the exact aforementioned behaviors you affirmation to despise. You don't apperceive what you're talking about, Harry attempt back, his accent acceptable added arresting as his agitation grew. You accept no abstraction what it's like to abound up in that environment, to accept every aspect of your activity scrutinized and controlled. And there it is, Sunny said, triumph evident in her voice. The victim card right on schedule. Because whenever you're confronted with the consequences of your choices, it's consistently someone else's fault, isn't it? It's the media's fault. It's your family's fault. It's the institution's fault. Never your fault. The flat was electric with tension now. Production administration were frantically whispering into their headsets, borderline whether to arbitrate or let this burnable bearings continue. The cameras connected rolling, capturing every micro-expression, every beam of anger, every moment of this rapidly deteriorating interview. I've taken responsibility for my mistakes, Harry said through gritted teeth. But I won't sit actuality and be lectured by someone who's never absolved in my shoes. Sunny laughed, a complete bare of any warmth. Walked in your shoes? You beggarly diamond-encrusted shoes that were handed to you at birth. You appetite to allocution about walking in shoes? Let's allocution about the people whose lives you've impacted with your choices. Let's allocution about your father dealing with blight while you're out there affairs belief about private family conversations. Harry's face went pale, again ablaze red. How cartel you bring up my father's health? That's completely out of line. Out of line? Sunny's articulation rose to bout his. You know what's out of line? Profiting from family affliction while accession yourself as some affectionate of altruistic hero. You know what's out of line? Application your mother's anamnesis as affecting blackmail every time addition questions your motives. The acknowledgement of his mother was clearly the amiss button to push. Harry shot to his feet, his armchair scraping against the flat attic with a harsh sound that echoed through the suddenly silent space. Don't you dare, he said, his articulation low and dangerous. Don't you dare accompany my mother into this. But Sunny wasn't abatement down. She remained seated, attractive up at him with unflinching determination. Why not? You bring her into aggregate else. Every interview, every speech, every justification for your behavior. My mother would accept capital this. My mother would accepted that. You've turned her anamnesis into a business tool. That's enough, Harry said, his hands visibly afraid with rage. I came here in acceptable acceptance to allocution about important issues and you've affronted this into a character assassination. Acceptable faith. Sunny stood up now affair him at eye level. Acceptable acceptance would accept being honest about your motivations from the beginning. Acceptable acceptance would accept acknowledging the aching you've caused instead of consistently arena the victim. Acceptable acceptance would accept having this chat afterwards your PR team pre-approving every question. My PR team didn't accept anything, Harry snapped. And if they had, they would have warned me about walking into an ambush. Sunny's eyes lit up with vindication. An ambush? Is that what we're calling accountability now? Because from area I stand, this is the first time Edition has asked you real questions instead of casting you softballs and absolution you ascendancy the narrative. The battle had reached a acme that Cypher in the studio could accept predicted. Two able-willed personalities, anniversary assertive of their own righteousness, adverse off in a battle that had transcended the boundaries of an archetypal interview. The air itself seemed to burst with animosity. You apperceive what your problem is, Sunny, Harry said, his voice dripping with disdain. You adumbrate behind the pretense of journalism to justify your cruelty. You breach bodies bottom ward and call it captivation them accountable. And you apperceive what your botheration is. Sunny fired aback afterwards hesitation. You've never been captivated absolutely answerable for anything in your absolute life. So, the moment Edition asks you adamantine questions, you abatement of far and alpha throwing accusations. The flat admirers was watching this barter like spectators at a tennis match, active axis back and alternating amid the two combatants. Some looked uncomfortable, others appeared absorbed by the raw effect on display. This was television gold, even if it was rapidly ambageous out of control. I've been captivated accountable, Harry insisted, admitting his articulation lacked conviction. I've accustomed my mistakes. I've formed to accomplish amends. Have you? Sunny challenged. Or accept you just begin new means to monetize your trauma while alienated any real consequences for your actions. Because from area I sit, accountability looks different than million-dollar book deals and Netflix contracts. Harry's jaw worked silently for a moment, as if he were aggravating to codify a acknowledgement that wouldn't accomplish things worse, but the damage was already done. The affectation had slipped, and anybody in that studio could see the anger, the entitlement, and the annoyance that he'd been working so adamantine to accumulate hidden. "This interview is over," he assuredly said, though he fabricated no move against the exit. "Is it?" Sunny asked, adopting an eyebrow. "Because we still accept 15 minutes larboard, and I accept a lot more questions about the inconsistencies in your assorted accessible statements." The challenge afraid in the air amid them, and it was bright that Harry was at a crossroads. He could erring abroad and look like he was active from the confrontation, or he could breach and risk further accident to his carefully cultivated image. Either way, Sunny had him absolutely area she capital him, and everyone in that flat could faculty that the affliction was yet to come. Harry's decision came abrupt and decisive. Instead of retreating, he stepped closer to Sunny's desk, his eyes afire with a fury that had been architecture throughout the absolute exchange. "You appetite to talk about accountability," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Let's talk about your accountability, Sunny. Let's talk about how you've congenital your career on disturbing bottomward bodies who can't fight back. Let's allocution about the lives you've destroyed with your so-called journalism." Sunny didn't flinch. If anything, she seemed activated by his aggression. "Is that a threat, Prince Harry? Because if it is, you're proving my point beautifully. The moment someone challenges you, you resort to intimidation tactics." "It's not a threat," Harry snapped. "It's an observation. You sit actuality assuming to be some affectionate of moral authority, but you're annihilation more than a adored account columnist with a law degree." The insult landed like a physical blow. Sunny's eyes flashed dangerously, and aback she spoke. Her voice agitated the abounding weight of her legal training and years of experience dealing with adverse witnesses. "A gossip columnist," she repeated. Her tone baleful calm. "That's rich, coming from Edition whose absolute post-royal career has been congenital on gossip. Gossip about your family, account about your childhood, account about private conversations that should accept stayed private. You've affronted ancestors' secrets into a cottage industry." Harry's composure assuredly burst completely. "At Atomic I'm cogent my own story instead of acrimonious afar added people's lives for entertainment." "Your own story?" Sunny's articulation rose to bout his intensity. "Which version?" "The version you told Oprah? The adaptation in your book? The adaptation you're peddling now? Because they're all different, Harry. And that's the problem. You can't keep your lies straight." "I've never lied," Harry protested. But alike as the words left his mouth, they articulate alveolate and unconvincing. Sunny pounced on the weakness like a predator, sensing wounded prey. "Never lied. What about the story you told about your ancestor cutting you off financially? What about the claims you fabricated about the aristocratic family's response to your brainy health struggles? What about the timeline of events you've presented apropos your decision to leave? Because I've done my homework, Prince Harry, and none of it adds up." The flat had become a pressure cooker of tension. Camera operators zoomed in to abduction every facial expression, every gesture, every sign of the affecting breakdown that seemed inevitable. The admirers sat in stunned silence, witnessing what was clearly the best Atomic interview confrontation in contempo memory. Harry's hands were afraid now. Whether from rage or panic, it was absurd to tell. "You don't apperceive what you're talking about. You weren't there. You don't know what absolutely happened." "Again acquaint me," Sunny challenged, aptitude advanced like a prosecutor carrying a closing argument. "Acquaint me the truth. Not the sanitized PR accustomed version. Not the victim anecdotal you've been selling. Tell me what absolutely happened and why you felt the charge to change your adventure every time you acquaint it." "I don't owe you anything," Harry said, his articulation breaking slightly. "I don't owe you explanations or justifications or annihilation else." "You're right," Sunny agreed, nodding slowly. "You don't owe me anything. But you owe article to all the people who've accurate you, who've believed in you, who've dedicated you aback others questioned your motives. Don't you think they deserve the truth?" For a moment, something flickered above Harry's face. Vulnerability conceivably or recognition, but it was gone as bound as it had appeared, replaced by an affectation of cold fury. "The truth," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You appetite the truth. The accuracy is that bodies like you will never be satisfied. No amount what I do, no amount how abundant I try to make amends or move forward, there will always be addition like you cat and mouse to tear me bottomward for their own benefit. Sunny stood up slowly, her movement deliberate and controlled. Bodies like me, you beggarly bodies who ask hard questions. Bodies who don't bow and scrape because you were built into privilege. Bodies who apprehend you to take real albatross for your actions. People who accumulation from added people's pain, harry attempt back. Bodies who hide behind appropriateness while destroying lives for ratings. The allegation hung between them like a gauntlet befuddled down in challenge. Sunny's acknowledgement was swift and devastating. You appetite to allocution about profiting from pain? You've made millions affairs your family's private moments. You've affronted your mother's death, your father's struggles, your brother's accord into agreeable for your assorted projects. And you accept the audacity to address me about ethics. Harry's face went through an alternation of expressions. Shock, rage, and finally something that looked about like defeat. But instead of abatement down, he seemed to acquisition a backlog of acrimony that pushed him accomplished any actual boundaries of civility. At Atomic I'm honest about who I am, he said, his articulation ascent to nearly a shout. I don't pretend to be some affectionate of journalistic crusader while ambushing bodies on a live television. Honest. Sunny's beam was acrid and mocking. You wouldn't apperceive bluntness if it bit you on your advantaged aristocratic behind. You've been lying to yourself and everyone abroad for so continued that I don't think you alike bethink what the truth looks like anymore. That was the final straw. Harry's face angled with rage and he took a footfall appear Sunny's desk that fabricated several Aegis personnel visible about face in their positions. How dare you? He said, his articulation afraid with fury. How cartel you sit there and question my candor aback? You spent this absolute account aggravating to destroy me for ratings. I didn't accept to try to destroy you, Sunny replied, her voice steady admitting the acuteness of the moment. You've done that altogether well yourself. I aloof asked questions. If the answers accomplish you attending bad, that's not my fault. That's yours. Harry stared at her for a continued moment, his chest ascent and falling rapidly. The flat was so quiet that the hum of the cameras was audible. Everyone seemed to be captivation their breath, cat and mouse to see what would happen next. Finally, Harry straightened his jacket with sharp, affronted movements. His voice, aback he spoke, was algid and controlled, but anybody could apprehend the barely independent acerbity underneath. This has been the best unprofessional, biased, and bluntly abominable interview I've any time experienced, he said, his words abrupt and precise. You should be abashed of yourself, Sunny. This isn't journalism. It's a hatchet job. Sunny remained continuing abaft her desk, unmoved by his words. The alone thing I'm abashed of is that it took this long for Addition to ask you these questions. Harry's jaw formed silently for a moment, as if he were aggravating to formulate one final devastating comeback, but instead he artlessly shook his arch in credible disgust. I'm done, he said, extensive up to remove his microphone with jerky, agitated movements. This is absolutely the affectionate of toxic behavior that I labored England to escape, and I banned to accountable myself to it for one added second. He threw the microphone bottomward on his armchair with enough force that the complete echoed through the studio speakers. Afterwards Addition word, he affronted and began striding against the exit, his movements articulate and angry. Prince Harry, we still accept 8 minutes left. Sunny alleged afterwards him, but her tone appropriate, she wasn't particularly disappointed by his departure. Harry paused at the bend of the set, turning back one final time. 8 account too many, he said, his articulation carrying clearly above the bashful studio. Good luck with your career, Sunny. I hope destroying bodies on television is everything you anticipation it would be. With that, he abolished into the wings, abrogation abaft a flat abounding of stunned faces and an admirers that seemed ambiguous whether to acclaim or sit in abashed silence. Sunny remained standing at her desk, watching his retreat with what could alone be described as satisfaction. Well, she said, axis aback to face the cameras with a slight smile. I think that tells us aggregate we charge to know about Prince Harry's charge to accountability and honest conversation. We'll be appropriate back afterwards this break. As the cameras cut abroad and the studio lights dimmed, the consequence of what had just abundant began to bore in. In less than 30 minutes, one of the most explosive confrontations in television history had played out in absolute time, leaving anybody complex forever changed by the barbarous bluntness of what had been revealed.
Thank you for watching my video.